And welcome to another edition of the Batchelor News Radio Report. We thank you for joining us. As always, being a part of this broadcast, wherever you are, we certainly appreciate you for joining us. I want to bring in my guest. Always good to have him on. Um, of course, he is the men's basketball coach at Virginia State, going way back to his Winston-Salem and St. Aug days. Of course, he is the one and only very good coach, and I'm biased, Lonnie Blow. And Coach Blow, appreciate you coming on, sir.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being on. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to ask you uh, first. You guys are on a three-game losing streak. Um, this is something that really in your 10 years with the Nest, that you've had your peaks and valleys, your hills and mountains and things, but this one's a little different in a sense that you know Bowie State, who certainly has played well in the past, struggled, came in and took it to you.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the score probably not indicative of the effort, especially in the second half. But they win by 20. You guys get off to a good start. They go on a run and really not really kind of catch up. What say you about this game?
Yeah, man. Tough game, man. I don't know. We obviously, I thought we didn't come out well to start the game. Number one, I didn't think they started the game particularly well either. Kind of a ragged game to start. And try to get our guys to understand how important it is to take advantage of those opportunities. They weren't really doing a whole lot early in the game themselves, and I thought we struggled. We struggled to kind of get going, like a nip and tuck game for a while there, and we just could never really get stops. The Morrison kid really hurt us, man, and we just did a poor job of recognizing him. We watched the film today, and we left him a couple times on help defense, and you gotta be more aware. Once he's hit one or two, you got to know who's who, and if you're gonna leave somebody, that ain't the guy you want to leave. But he really got it going, man, and the basket opened up for him, and until we decided to kind of just basically keep the ball out of his hands, that's the only way to kind of cooled him down, because we just didn't do a really good job of paying attention to detail and locating him and doing a good job of containing him.
Some of the issues that you had. I mean, you clearly you're 12-7, and you sit in a good position. Certainly, you want to be in a better position in terms of the CIAA. But is what happened in this game indicative of what's been happening in your season?
Well, this was just one of those games. I think, I don't know. The number one thing is, we played without Chris. We played without Jacob Cooper. Um,
Right.
I don't think we did a really good job of other guys kind of stepping to the forefront and understanding that without him, we're gonna have to play a little differently, and a lot of other guys gonna have to do some things that he kind of makes it easy for us. You know what I mean? He makes it easy for those guys. He's just so good with the ball, and he kind of orchestrates everything with his communication and stuff like that. So playing without him, we talked to other guys before the game, before came up, and said, no, Jacob, you gotta kind of do more, lead more, and everybody's got to do more. And I just don't think we did that. I think that we came out again, didn't have the energy that we should have had, and I think never really got going.
I mean, Clint Mackey, legend scoring, and when you look at this game, Jawir White, and it seemed like it was bits and pieces in terms of what you got. But when you look at the game, and I wasn't at the game, but I always analyze Coach Blow, the numbers and the field goal percentage and the 3 point percentage and the free throw percentage, um, rebounds, turnovers, steals. I mean, rebounds, turnovers, and steals, you're about the same. But defensively, they shot 50%.
Right.
3 point percentage, they shot almost 59%. And then they almost shot 79 from the free throw line. You guys shot about 63%. Um, talk about that. It doesn't talk about points in the paint. You guys they out rebound you by a point, which in your pedigree is something that it's not the norm because you're a defensive rebounding guy and press guy. But talk about the field goal percentage. Did your defense see anything different that they weren't prepared for? You were down 12 at halftime. What say you about the first half and the percentage that were they getting open looks or was it easy layups? What was the difference in this game in that regard, defensively?
Yeah, again, I think we did a bad job of helping. For example, the Davis kid, point guard, really good player, but he's a pass first kind of guy. And so he'd get to the paint, and once he got to the painted area, we're helping out on him, not understanding that he wants you to help out on him. He's a passer. And so you got to understand, you got to be able to help him recover or make sure you make him score over our length and wall up on him and make him take a tough shot. He did a bad job of that. We just reacted and helped on him. And he did a good job of finding big guys under the basket for layups in the first half, especially. And again, I thought we did a really bad job on the Morrissey kid, just locating him, man. He's 11 for 12 for the game. And so you look at their shooting percentage, and, a lot of it was him. Anytime he let a guy go 11 for 12, he's a good player. He takes quality shots. And I told him, if you leave him open, he's going to make it. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys that just kind of takes advantage of what you give him. He's not going to force stuff and, take a bunch of bad shots, but we did a bad job of kind of giving him some wide open looks, got him going. He got some drives to the basket, got fouled and things like that. But just got to do a better job of containing guys that get going and basically containing dribble penetration.
Do apologize for the technical difficulties here. Talking with Lonnie Blow, he is the men's basketball coach at Virginia State. Getting ready, winding down for the last week of February, getting ready for the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association (CIAA) tournament. Coach, did you say anything different when you saw that they weren't, what your team defensively wasn't getting on this kid? At halftime down 12. What did you say to them?
Well, I told him, we got to do a better job, of making it tough for him. But once a kid gets going, like he had it going, man, I'm sure he saw a big basket. He hit some tough shots, over our hand, but he had already got it going. He hit a couple shots the second half and started to get it going again. And so what we did is kind of just took the ball out of his hand and overplayed him and didn't let him catch it. And not necessarily a boxing one or anything like that. We just try to limit his catches, and the guy guarding him, he wasn't helping.
Coach, what do you do with a kid? When he's got the hot hand? A lot of people try to, and I know you want to press tempo. You want to speed up the game, full court, three quarters, half court, boxing one, and then man, as a last resort. But did you make those adjustments or try to make those adjustments? I know a kid's got a hot hand, a kid's got a hot hand. But if
Right.
you make it difficult, is this difference between 10 of 24 and 14 of 24 in terms of making baskets. Those four baskets could be the difference in the game. So any adjustments that you made down 12 at halftime?
Yeah, we did. We definitely made some adjustments at halftime, but we watched the film today, and we just saw just a lack of awareness. Just a lack of awareness.
Right.
He had the first 7 points of the game. And then one of their guys drove, and we, kind of were in the gaps trying to be in help defense and not recognizing he's right. You're guarding him. You got to know, because different guys were getting hit at different times. We end up pressing and we get back, and there's a different guy end up picking him up. So he got almost everybody. So when this guy's turned to guard him, he fell asleep and didn't pay attention to him. Boom, he hits a three. Next time down, another guy, gets him because he's not alert to who's in his area or who he's got. And we call it short rope. We call it short rope, meaning certain guys, you just don't, go too far from them. So you can always get back to him on closeout. And I think that we just got too far from him. And again, you got to know what he's doing, man. How many you need him to hit before you realize you got to kind of let somebody else try to make some shots?
Talking with Lonnie Blow, men's basketball coach for Virginia State University. Basketball got a big game coming up this weekend, which we'll talk about, Elizabeth City State. Uh, Coach, talk about your roster, what you like to do offensively, defensively in this team, because, and I'll bring up the NIL and the transport a little bit later, but talk about what you have on offense and on defense right now.
I think we got a balanced team. I think when our when our big guys really come to play, I thought they were pretty active last night. I thought they did a really good job of, especially Jason Harris get some really good post position. We just missed them. We watched it on film again and just watch how many times he got prime time post position inside, and we didn't get him the ball. But when we can get the ball inside and score on offensive rebounds and get some, some post presence. But for us, Jacob Cooper's been the guy, man. Jacob Cooper's had, a sensational year so far, and I think we've leaned on him a little too much. And we talked a lot about, other guys got to do more because he just, makes the game so easy for those guys. And he just, handles the ball and creates easy shots, opportunities, gets in the paint whenever he wants to. Nobody can keep him out of the paint. Scores, also inside and outside. So, he's the kind of straw that stirs the drink for us, so to speak. And we just got to get used to doing other guys making, some plays off the ball and creating shots for other people and things like that. I think we got to get out of our roles that we have when Jacob's playing and just kind of play the game, so to speak.
One of the things, Coach, sorry about that. One of the things, Coach, you talked about and what you predicate your roster, if you will, on is size and depth.
Yes.
Talk
Yeah.
about the size and depth right now this year as you get closer and closer to the tournament.
Yeah. It's kind of been a season of runs for us. Obviously we started off 1-3 early in the year. And then we just kept at it, kept working hard, and kind of got things turned around, and went on a winning streak and was really playing well before Christmas. The last couple games before Christmas at Fayetteville State and at Claflin, two of our better games, and we're really playing well going into break, which was a bad time for a break, but anyway, we had a 5-game winning streak there, and coming out of the break, we had a 4-game homestand conference games, and we managed to win all 4 of those, but we didn't play well. In some of those games, like the Winston game, we had 20-point lead, we win by 6. Some of those games were close games down the stretch that we ended up just kind of pulling it out. And even though we were winning the games, we weren't playing, quality basketball. And I think sometimes, that can be a kind of false sense of security there. And I was trying to explain to those guys the whole time that, hey, man, it's not about winning games. It's about, the process itself and playing better and getting better every single day, every single practice, every single game. But, we've got a lot of depth, man. I think that our guard play obviously is really good with Cooper and Bynum, being 2 really good guards. They play together a lot, and they both really kind of point guards, combo guards, whatever you want to call them. But Clint Wright just had a really good year shooting the ball and, putting the ball on the floor a lot more, getting to the basket now. And We've got some Daryl Mackey's had a really good year too. So when our guards can, play well and our bigs can play well at the same time, I think we're really good. We got a young kid, Tim Uzuchukwu, who's a sophomore that's had a really good year. Hurt his ankle again, but I think, early in the year we were healthy, and I kind of watched some of the other teams kind of have, little injuries here and there, but we were, knock on wood, we were healthy pretty much most of the year, and then all of a sudden, the little injury bug started to hit us a little bit. But that's basketball. It's part of the game. It's part of the game. So we just got to, continue to get ourselves healthy. Because I think, I've been telling some of the coaches this thing may be a war of attrition. Whoever can get to Baltimore with all the guys. But
And
got a lot of
this,
depth.
this is a unique situation for you, and you're very humble, but I praise you in a sense that you know at this late in the year you have a 3-game losing streak, and that's not Lonnie Blow, and that talks about your excellence. So I'm praising you at the same time.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, and coach, think about this too. Um, how has the NIL and the transport affected you? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Are you kind of in between? What's your thoughts, and what has it, if it has affected your program?
Okay, yeah. First of all, talking about the NIL, I'm all for young people getting money. They put a lot into this thing. They generate a lot of money. So for a long time that's been coming. So I'm all for that, for them getting something out of the deal. A lot of people are making money off them. So I don't have a problem with that part of it. But the other part is that I think that's, kind of getting under a lot of other coaches and running coaches out of business and things like that is because, I think winning is kind of taking a back seat, with all this NIL and transfer portal and all the other stuff that's going on. It's fine. I understand everybody wants their own opportunity. But at some point, this thing's always been about winning. Winning's been the top priority and all that. And I think with all the other stuff that's going on, it's kind of pushing winning aside, so to speak, or winning is not the number one thing anymore. And so I think that's the tough part of it, especially for coaches, because, at the end of the day, and I'm just talking not just on our level, because on our level, it's not a whole lot of it. I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure it's coming like it always does, trickles down from Division One. But on our level, it's not a whole lot of it right now. But those schools have to raise money just to get kids, kind of get pay kids to play, so to speak. And that's tough, because if a young man's making whatever he's making is whatever his NIL is. I mean, he's going to get that regardless, whether he plays good, whether he plays bad, whatever the case may be. He's still going to get the same amount, so to speak. But transfer portal is, it's an end thing. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think kids should have a right to try to play where they think they can fit in better if they don't like their situation. So, I really don't have a problem with that. It's just tougher trying to put teams together. But as a coach, man, sometimes that's fun. Sometimes that's fun to have new guys coming in and fresh energy. Trying to put it all together like a puzzle, so to speak, and see where you end up at the end. But those days of having one team and for a long time are kind of by the wayside. So you got to kind of make the adjustments as you go.
Well, it was funny. I'm sure one of your contemporaries and colleagues, Robert Jones, in Norfolk State, and he pretty much said the same thing. It really hasn't affected the HBCUs as much, but in terms of transfers, you've seen he's had player of the years leave, and then he had to get JUCOs and different things to come in and make it happen. Coach Mouton, as you know, North Carolina State, um, he talked about loyalty
Mhm.
from the players and things, and then you talked about these guys who get paid, and he said that too. So it's a very hot topic. It's very um, a deep discussion, But at the end of the day, it seems like, though, Coach, just to get your final comments on it, that um, it's in the eye of the beholder in terms of, if you're LA Bachelor and nobody in your family has graduated from college, hell, half of them didn't graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way for you to get your mom and dad or your moms or your sisters and brothers out of poverty. You take that and then you leave. I mean, I never knew, Coach Blow, that kids especially in football, but even in basketball, they play like for 4, 5, 6 high schools. Like, that's crazy. That's insane. But they do it because they're trying to position themselves in most cases
That's
to
right.
get to where they can get drafted, whether it be in your sport or another, where they can take care of their family. So it's an interesting dynamic to that, Coach Blow. That some people do it for the money in terms of taking that family out of poverty and giving them a better life.
Oh, no question about that. No question about that. But I'm all for that. I'm all for the opportunity to make money, especially off your own name, image, and likeness. Because I mean, those young people are student athletes are the one putting in a lot of these hours in the weight room and conditioning and year-round conditioning and all that, and film study and everything. They're putting in a lot of hours, So I'm all for that. I really am. But I'm sure Coach Jones said the same thing, that at the end of the day, it's just a whole lot of other different factors today. You look at you look at social media, you look at the highlight culture. You look at everybody wants to get highlights, and so you throw all that stuff together in one pot, and it just kind of has changed the dynamics of it. Whereas years ago, the number one focus and everybody's focus was basically on winning. You talk about those kids that went to all those different schools. Years ago, if your coach developed you and you turned into a good player, you're not going to leave him, because he's the reason why you're a good player.
Right.
But change to where the coach will develop you as a young age, you're turned into a pretty good player. You're gone. You know what I mean? And that's the loyalty part that they were talking about. And I don't blame you for, if you got a better opportunity, you can get more money. You probably need the money for your family. You got to go. You got to do that. You got to do that. But the game itself is suffering because winning is kind of taking a back seat.
Yeah, and Coach, I gotta say too, and just kind of make this statement, uh, because in your career, I followed your career. You've been sought at, and so the other part of it is, I mean, really, the John Calipari's
Mm-hmm.
and others move on for money, and they get the endorsements. I mean, living in Durham, um, Coach K and his wife is God. Like, everything is Coach K, and he's retired, and he's still living off the fruits of his labor.
Right.
Um, so I would just say, and it doesn't apply to you because I've followed your career and what you've done, but there are coaches out there that don't give a damn about these kids. They want their money and their power, and they move from university to university. I just mentioned John Calipari, who has a big game. He's at Arkansas now. The old Nolan Richardson team, um, and he'll be playing his old team he coached, which is Kentucky. And we can go back to UMass and all these other places that he's been. So it's not like the coaches are poor and hungry in that regard. So to your point that the likeness of the players, and we've seen this kind of coming anyway. Um, but talk about some of the coaches, yourself, excluded in terms of just chasing that bag. Because when you chase the bag, then why would it be any loyalty from the at this in this day and time? Why would it be loyalty from the kids if coaches are chasing bags too?
Well, you got to look at the big picture. The big picture is not just you talk about coaches chasing bags or the student athletes trying to get make sure they get their NIL money. But you got to look at schools as well. You got to look at this conference realignment where these schools are having conferences all across the country. And again, you can't blame them if the difference in one conference and another conference is millions and millions of dollars. So look at
Right.
the exact same thing. I'm out. I'm gonna play, in another conference because we're revenue sharing. We got the whole, TV package and conference, package where everybody gets a certain amount of money. So we can't really blame them as well if it's a $50 million difference or more. You mean you got to go to the conference
I
where
did.
you
That's why I asked you the question.
yeah, I'm not mad at that, so to speak. So I think it's kind of all, every level, so to speak. It's unfortunate kind of that the money has kind of, changed things around. But like you say, we saw it coming. We saw it coming kind of a while back. You just got to make the adjustments and, just keep, working with young people and try to get them to understand that, how hard you still got to work, to be good, not just good in basketball, but but good in life, so to speak. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's always been about for me. The money part, obviously we get paid to do
So
what we, but that's the satisfaction working with young people.
yes, and if you're successful like you have at the levels you've been, the money's gonna come. I mean, they want you, so they're gonna pay you the
Right.
money to come there. In most cases, sometimes it's lateral moves, sometimes it's different, whatever. But
Now,
the money.
quick
Go
story
ahead.
to that point. I was talking to some of the coaches, and I was like, well, for a young kid today, the way that the landscape has changed, if he probably should come out of school and go to a smaller school than he's.
Mm,
You see what I'm saying? Go to a come right.
yeah,
Don't go to a top school. And yeah, you're gonna get your money. You're gonna get your pay. You're gonna get paid, whatever. But if you go to a smaller school and just have one heck of a year, now you just kind of make more money because you go to the highest bidder, so to speak, as opposed to if you go somewhere and just kind of play a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, you'll
yeah,
get your money, but the way it's set up now, that the kid that has a great year at a smaller level and moves up, or a smaller school, he doesn't have to be a smaller level. I mean, a smaller school. You know what I mean? And he goes to one of those basketball powerhouses. He has a mid-major, super year. Next thing you know, he's at a high major school making a big bet.
yeah. Talking with Lonnie Blow, the men's basketball coach for Virginia State. Get to Elizabeth City State shortly, Coach. So let me just ask you this: um, when you get a kid, and I know you had them, that man, this kid, if he's around 1 year, he probably gonna. If he's not going to NBA, he's gonna transfer to instead of Virginia State, he's going to Virginia, or he's going to something bigger powerhouse and bigger. I call them the five families. I call them the six families now. Although now they putting Stanford in the Big Ten and all this crazy stuff.
Uh,
But I call them the five families. So
ACC.
right, right. So if you have a kid like that, how do you coach that kid? And Nick, I see you on the line. How do you coach that kid? Um, to be sharp and to be a team player. I mean, he might even be a team player,
Right,
but
right.
you see that man. He ain't going D2. After D2, he going D1 somewhere, Colorado, like with Dion or stuff. That kind of thing. How do you kind of approach that when you get a kid like that? Because I know you've had a lot of talent that have
Right.
come through all your programs.
Yeah, yeah, but once you get a young kid like that, especially, a lot of this stuff is relationships still. We can talk about the money aspect, and if you get an opportunity to get some money, again, you got to take it like that. But a lot of it is relationships. But you want to push the kid to greatness, man. You don't want to hold him back and try to contain, what he can do to try to hold on to him or anything like that. If he gets an opportunity, that's good for him. It's good for you. It's good for everybody involved. So you just kind of push him to the max like you would any of the other players, and try to get the most out of him every day and teach him the right things, like you would everybody else. But I just kind of let it take care of itself. You know what I mean? I never try to tell a kid not to do this. If he asks me advice or something, I'd give it to him, but I never tell him to do this or do that, because again, he's got to make his own decisions. But that's just how it goes, man. Young people today have those opportunities, and it's good for them. Opportunity is always good.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a slippery slope, though, Coach, because um, you've handled it. It sounds like you've handled it the right way and stuff, but you don't always get those relationships as it relates to player coaches. Especially if you're a coach that's old school, like don't do. I'm before the NIL, and that kind of thing. I was watching just a quick point. I was watching the point shaving thing with the mafia in Boston with the Boston College and the players, and some guys just got a gift and they thought it was a gift. Some guys knew their legs were going to be broken, and the coach was sort of what we call it, uh, um, where they don't know and they don't want to know. So the assistants are handling everything. Plausible deniability is what I'm saying. Like the coach, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Tom Davis, of course, from Iowa, coached at BC. It was going on during his tenure. He didn't know about it. He said he didn't know about it, and so on and so forth. But the point is that the old school with the new school seems to clash right now, even
Mm-hmm.
at the HBCU level, and it just like I said, Coach Mouton, it said, look, where's the loyalty? Like I'm here, I'm still here, I never left, right? And I get that, but and on the flip side, and I'm not talking about Coach, but on the flip side, some people have left John Calipari. So if John Calipari can go get his bag, a lot of these nuanced kids are saying, well, I get mine. So that's what they do.
And
But I digress.
like
I don't know if you want to go ahead. Go
real
ahead.
quick, thing. A few years back, I had someone that had talked about, giving some NIL money to a kid on my team or a couple kids, and I said, yeah, we can we can, probably work it out. I said, but I'd prefer to take the money and give it to maybe 4 or 5 kids, split it up,
Right,
you know,
right.
kids instead of giving it to one, one student athlete, so to speak. Again, it's not my money, so I can't tell them what to do with it, But I just suggested that, if we do the deal, I would just suggest that we kind of spread it out, other 4 or 5 kids.
And that's the fair thing to do. You'll have a kid that say, "No, I'm the star. I'm dropping 30 every now and then, so I should get most of the money." But again, that's the conversation I'm working on a round table. You're gonna be a part of it,
Hey,
Coach.
he
Go
should
ahead.
probably he should probably get a little more, than the others get. I'm just saying, if he's doing that, he'll get a little more. We'll just get the other guys a little bit less. That's how it goes.
Right, 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 right. I just said talking in some groups and understanding some people who have said, "Nah, I'm dropping 35 for this squad. I want
Right.
90% of it." I mean, I've come across that, but I'll digress, and we'll come back to that at a later date in terms of some a roundtable. But coach, big game coming up this weekend. What does this team um, present defensively and offensively that may give you some issues.
They're really good, man. They're one of the better teams in the league, and we got some really good teams. All around the league, and they're really talented, man. They are good from 1 through 5. They got some guys on the bench that can play. They're a really good team, and one of those teams where everybody kind of has a role. The point guard plays his role. Guard, he's really good shooting it. And then they got a forward who's kind of a rebounder, defender, and then they got another forward who's a pick and pop shooter, and then they got the big kid who's one of the better bigs in our league. Man, he's a rebounding machine, and so you really got to deal with him inside. You got to make sure you keep him from getting prime time position. If he gets it really low, you're not going to stop it. So you got to do your work early and make him have to catch the ball, off the block a little bit and have to face up and do some face up stuff. You let him get to that jump hook with either hand. He's tough to deal with. So they got a really balanced team and they play well together. Defensively, they try to speed you up. They'll try to speed you up. Coach Richardson does a really good job of, mixing up his defense. He's going to play some zone, some man, and try to keep you all balanced a little bit. So, we got to be ready to play, man. We got to be ready to play 40 minutes against those guys. Hopefully we can get off to a really good start. It's going to be a big crowd there this weekend, and always is now. And they got a little different atmosphere down there now, man, than it used to be. So we got to be ready to play again if we can get off to a good start and hopefully play well during the middle of the game and hopefully finish strong as well.
Yeah, I would think too, Coach. You want to get off to a fast start, especially if they want to, and you had mentioned about trapping, full court, 3/4, half, playing boxing ones and stuff. If they mix their defense up, I'm sure that would be a concern for you in terms of what they try to do. But what are the keys to the game to get a victory against this team in their play?
Yeah, well, we got to guard them, man. We got to be ready to guard defensively, and we got to be ready to guard all of them because they got a lot of capable scorers on the floor at the same time. So our defense has got to be really good, not just our individual defense, but our team defense as well. We got to be together as a group collectively on defense. And then we got to rebound the ball at a high level, man. Again, the Williams kid inside is one of the leading rebounders in the country. The Rayner kid is an outstanding rebounder also. We got to make sure we keep those two guys, especially off the boards. And, we're going to have our hands full, but we got to try to be aggressive. We got to be aggressive on both ends of the floor, be in attack mode on offense. And, on defense, we got to dictate to them a little bit and try to make them uncomfortable.
Well, I think it's going to be a great game. And Coach, if anybody can get it done leading into the CIAA tournament, it would be you. And Coach Blow, I look forward to seeing you there. God bless you. Be careful. And
Thanks.
best of luck moving forward, sir.
Thanks, LA. Appreciate that, man. Thanks for having me on. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate you, man.
All right, my man. Take care.
All right. Lonnie Blow, of course, he is the men's basketball coach at Virginia State University. I want to go right back to the phone. Always good to have my guest on from Manassas Media. He is Nick Anastas, and if I can power him up on this thing here, I will be more than happy to get him in. Here we go. Nick, always a pleasure, sir. How are you?
I'm good, LA. How are you?
Good, good, good. Heard the coach, but you cover local basketball, high school, college, obviously, uh, um, in the New England area, New Hampshire area. Uh, what have if the coaches have said anything in terms of the NIL and the transport in terms of these players, how it's affected the players? Because even as we just had an HBCU coach on, it's still not at the level of, say, New England sports. So, what would you say would be the complaint or the concerns that they have?
Well, up here, I would say that the portal is more of an issue right now than the NIL, at least amongst the teams that I cover firsthand. As you know, I've over the last several years, I've been around the UMass Lowell Riverhawks basketball program, which is a mid-major that plays in the America East Conference. That includes Vermont, University of New Hampshire, University of Maine, etc. And I also am around St. Anselm College, which is one of the better Division II programs in the country. Both staffs seem to have the same quote unquote complaint, at least off the air, and that is the impact of the portal. And I heard the tail end of your interview there with Coach Blow, and how you guys kind of revisited the theme of loyalty and kids kind of sticking around. The portal has kind of upended that. Loyalty seems to have at least taken a back seat in turn, to opportunity. Opportunity continues to be the main word, the main underlined word. And how it's such a good tool for kids and can be a good tool for coaches. However, the flip side of that coin is that now you're seeing kids, even all the way down at the D2 level, who have their eyes on their next stop. So, the NIL money is one conversation. That's one topic. That's one challenge. And the portal, I think, is the other. And when you combine the two, what we're seeing now, I think, is a real-time transition from what was a complete amateur league to now a semi-pro league across the board, where we're having, again, the same business-oriented decisions being made by players and coaches across the board at a much, much, much more prevalent rate than we saw prior to either. So this is a new ball game for everybody involved. And I think a lot of folks are still trying to find their footing and come to grasps with the new landscape. So this is not just something that is affecting those at the top, those at the blue chip programs, the historically prestigious, North Carolinas and Dukes. This is going down through all 300 plus D1 teams, all the D2 teams, and even some Division III teams. So we're seeing it have an impact across the board on a number of different fronts, for good or bad.
But it's really ridiculous, Nick, that Stanford's like in the Big Ten or whatever. I'm assuming they're in the Big Ten. And it really boils down to it's not about HBCUs, historically black college universities. It's not about D2. It's not about, the UMass Lowell. It's about these big time programs that say, oh, yeah, well, yeah, we can travel all across the country, but because we make a ton of money, so we can do it. And so instead of the NCAA, which I feel have zero power in anything, these schools are like, okay, well, we're going to print money. And in order to print money, we're going to be in these big time programs. So Texas can fly all the way up to New England, or Stanford can fly all the way to Virginia. And because they got the money, they can be in these programs and they just print money. Meanwhile, D2s, D1 AAs, HBCUs can't afford to do that. They can't travel like that. They don't have the money and the funds or the resources or the alum even to even compete. So as I'm a pro player guy, so I'm all about the money. I mean, these guys are like this and everything, so they should get paid. At the same time, um, I don't understand why people don't get that it should be some kind of balance because, as I said to Coach Blow, Coach K, he's retired, but go to Durham, North Carolina, and it's all Coach K. All right now, it's all Coach K. and it's all Duke and Carolina and Chapel Hill. It's the same thing. So, like, where does it end? How do you fix this? Because the little guy are, for me, in my understanding and the research and the people I talk to, the little guy, which I just chronologized, um, are not reaping the benefits as a coach, as players, as the alum, and the money's coming in.
Right. And part of that environment is because it's now easy to just pack up and leave. Um, when you have this kind of race, this kind of arms race, and that's kind of what it is when you break it down. Um, can the big dogs acquire the best players at the expense of everybody else, and then it becomes a trickle down effect from there? And to your point, you're absolutely correct. Once you get outside of really the Power Five conferences, the resources are much more limited across the board.
Right.
So the rich continue to get richer, so to speak. As far as the conferences themselves go, they abandoned rationality and geography a long time ago. At this point,
Yeah.
it really kind of started when they dismantled the old Big East about 10, 15 years ago now. That, when you saw like the Marylands and, the West Virginias of the world, it creeps westward to the middle part of the country where you saw Creighton, pack up their stuff. It's all about, the mentality, of course, is like that of an arms race where it's about, uh, getting the best players no matter what the cost, putting your program on the bigger stage no matter what the cost. And when I'm talking about the cost, I'm talking about consistency in the schedule, the regional rivalries that took a backseat or got axed altogether in this process. Those kind of things that made the sport fun as a fan to cheer for, have gone by the wayside. It used to be that you knew everybody on the college basketball roster, at least the guys coming in as veterans. You could pencil them in for 3 or 4 years. You got familiar with them as a fan. You could follow their career really from day one, and they became household names, at least in the region. That used to be how it is. Now, in the era of one and done, in the era of the transfer portal, it's hard to get familiar with these players when the entire roster basically changes every year. Same thing again with the scheduling, where you could pencil in a rivalry. You could count on a packed house. You could count on that kind of enthusiasm. You could count on that hype going into the game. Um, now again, where geography plays no role, teams aren't guaranteed to even be in the conference, further than a 2-year contract or whatever it is. Those rivalries go by the wayside. So it's a changing landscape on a number of fronts.
But I don't, and I guess I'm old school, uh, Nick. I mean, I'm certainly older than you. But I don't want to see UConn playing SMU. Like
Right.
Marquette is a stretch in itself. I'm a Husky fan from Connecticut, of course. But the fact that they have to play SMU or somebody, it's just the vibe. I think it turns off unless you're a diehard. You have to be a diehard
Right.
to accept that UConn's playing SMU and just deal with it. And it's a win or it's a dub or an L, and you move on from that. And I just think that some people can't keep track of it
Right.
because it's just different. The games are different because they're playing. If they have to go out west to play, you just can't keep up. So it's just really different, and it's an awkward feel for a lot of people like me who just look at it's especially when it comes to college basketball as regional. Like you playing those. Remember how Big East started? You know it. You know the Big East history. How it started. Like Dave Gavin's like, wait, We got all this talent in the Northeast, and we're not in the conference. We need to build a conference, and they built it. And then, I pick on the turncoats of Syracuse and Pittsburgh and some of those others that went to the ACC, but it's just different. It's a different kind of feel, money wise or not. It's just totally different for a lot of people.
Right. And it was my, you know, I tried to give you the long-winded answer. Let me just shorten it. It comes down to familiarity. Do the fans know their teams? I mean, that should be the first thing. Do they know their opponents? That's the second team. If you can get consistency with just those two simple things, then all of a sudden I think that goes a long way towards rebuilding what we once had, which was regional-based rivalries. And that is now out the window, as you highlighted. So, yes, the portal era is at least on paper good for the players because it creates opportunity. Mobility is more accessible, but it's coming at the cost of the fan and their familiarity towards the program and the conferences that they're in. And until we see some year after year after year consistency again, fans are going to lose out on that front.
Mm. Talk with Nick Anastas here on the Batchelor News Report. Nick, you and I, we both about the player, you know, and getting their bag and things of that nature. Mr. Edelman himself had talked about, he was asked about, Patrick Mahomes and the greatness and if he surpassed. And I didn't realize, Nick, and you knew because you're up there. I forgot that Tom Brady won 3 or 4 Super Bowls or three, and then he went like 10 years without winning, and then he won a bunch. So Edelman was talking about these 2 lives that Tom Brady had, and he pointed out that Patrick Mahomes might go through those 2 lives, and it's how he affects with Chris Jones gone, or Andy Reid gone, or Travis Kelsey gone, or all these older veteran guys gone. How do you adjust? I mean, are you going to continue to take that hometown discount like Brady did because he wanted players in. So he didn't make the most money. He's going to get his endorsements anyway. And then he brought in Randy Moss and all these other guys that came in that, of course, he didn't win. But bringing in all these guys in to continue the legacy. So what say you about Edelman and what he said about Patrick Mahomes? Because again, Mahomes got 3. If they win next a week from this Sunday, that's 4. That's 3 in a row. My boy Bradshaw didn't do it. Rob Staubach didn't do it. Certainly Brady didn't do it, or any of the other great franchises that have 3 or 5 Super Bowls. They've never won back to back to back. Even the Dallas team that was really dominant with Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Irvin, they never did it. So if he does that, that's 4. He's not even 30. And so he's got a few more years. So how does that play out? You think what Edelman said and what you think as it relates um, to Mahomes, especially when you got Burrow and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and all these other guys in more quarterbacks in the AFC than you have that can challenge him in the NFC.
That depends on how the Chiefs handle the roster moving forward. I think it's that simple. And based on their track record, I don't see any reason to doubt them. They draft well every year. They handle the cap well every year. They don't typically make a huge splash in free agency, but they always bring in 1 or 2 guys to kind of fill holes. They're in terms of roster management, they're second to none, in my opinion, or at least in that top tier. So, yes, those questions you pose down the road, those are going to become realities. Travis Kelsey is 35 years old. Andy Reid is in his late 60s. Chris Jones is on the wrong side of 30. So those
Right.
are vacancies that are going to be coming down the road sooner rather than later, and those are going to present challenges to the Chiefs. The question is, obviously, can you keep Mahomes healthy throughout this whole thing? And two, can you continue to build a championship contending roster around him in the years moving forward, like the Patriots did? Edelman was spot on. When he said there were really two acts to Brady's career. I think there were three. You had the first act, which was 3 out of 4 Super Bowls in the early days, where it was ground and pound. You had Charlie Weiss as the OC. You had Romeo Crennel as the DC. Then they had that quote unquote 10-year spell where it's not like they were not competitive.
Hey, Romeo Cornell, aka Isaac from the Level. He actually looks. We used to say it all the time, but go ahead.
Yeah, love him or hate him, he was a big part of that staff, and you could argue that
Right.
that defense won at least that first Super Bowl against the greatest show on turf.
Yeah.
And then you go into the second act, which was, quote unquote, the Randy Moss era, if you want to call it that. Certainly, Wes Welker had a big part in that. Even after Moss, when they brought in the two tight end set with Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, those teams were competitive, but they always, in the end, came up short. Whether it was the 16-0 team that lost that first Super Bowl to the Giants. There was a year where they lost to Philadelphia, where Nick Foles of all people threw for 500 yards. So those were championship worthy teams that for whatever reason just didn't get over the finish line. So that was kind of the second act. Then the third act was, Brady was winning games mentally. Gone were the days where he was throwing deep down the field and getting all the accolades, et cetera. His numbers were still good, but it was more of the early days, the return of the early days, more balance on offense, a better defense to get you over the finish line, et cetera. And as a result, they win another 3 in a 5-year span. Then, it looked like the writing was on the wall. Here he is at age 40. The team had a first-round playoff exit. It looked like that was the end of the road. And then, he goes to Tampa Bay and wins one more. So, that's the Tom Brady career arc. Almost like an ancient tragedy, or not a tragedy, a play that comes in 3 acts. Anybody that knows anything about storytelling, it goes back thousands of years. There's 3 acts. And that's
But
exactly what we saw with Tom Brady.
I gotta say though, you kind of came in. You and I kind of came in around that time where Brady can't do this anymore,
Right.
and he did it. It's almost like a fourth act because that Randy Moss act really did produce a lot.
Yeah.
And then the mental act, it's really, so you kind of skip a little bit, and then you get to where you and I have had conversations, and you said there's no way this team does anything, and this guy does it, and I agree with you. And then yet he did what he did. So there's what were those acts. Let me ask you this: the conversation has been around how because he's won 7, right? That some trophy, some award, whether it be MVP or MVP of the Super Bowl, should be named after him. We got the Vince Lombardi for the champion. You look at basketball, Jordan's got the MVP. Will Chamberlain's got something. I mean, Jerry West is the symbol on the basketball, on the NBA. So, how do you feel about that guy? Because the only thing is that everybody thought Bradshaw was great. Everybody thought Montana was great. In terms of championships, I'm a big Marino fan, so I'm a little biased. But when you had those guys that won titles, they won 4, right? And then here comes Brady with 7, and you have Pat Mahomes with the potential of 4, which means he can have before 30, he has a chance to tie Brady with 3. One side of it is like, okay, well, Brady, records are meant to be broke. So why did you put that in place? On the other hand, the way he did it, 7 out of 10, people say, "What's the big deal?" The Bill O'Brien went to the David Stern, and then went to the Jordan, and all this other stuff. I mean, what say you in terms of that aspect? The fact that Brady is the standard, Mahomes can break the standard and change the name at the same time in terms of the award.
Um, I typically tend to come down on okay, I'm for honoring Brady, but I don't want to
Right,
do it at the expense of somebody else. And in this case, it would be Lombardi. Um, I'm a little uncomfortable with diminishing one guy's accomplishment in order to promote another's. I think they should
right.
leave the Lombardi Trophy alone. That's really a household name. I mean,
Lombardi won what? 3 titles, 2 Super Bowls, but there are coaches that won more. So should they change it because he had one more? I mean, I'm just looking at it from both
yeah, no,
standpoints. I
I
mean,
hear you, but I think Lombardi holds a special place because he won the first two, and
right,
he really not only won the first two, but he served as kind of the bridge from the old school to the new school era. Remember, Green Bay was 9-1 under him in the postseason.
hmm,
Um, with a number of classic games, under his belt, including the Ice Bowl, if I'm not mistaken.
right. It's Dallas, yeah,
So yeah, and again, in terms of awards outside of the Stanley Cup, what other award is a household name in itself? I would argue it's the Lombardi
it's
Trophy.
Dallas, yeah,
So to take Lombardi's name off of the trophy where it's been for God knows how long, I think would be a mistake and a disservice. Um, are there any trophies left without a name? Is there a name for the Super Bowl MVP trophy? I don't know. I don't believe there is.
Well,
But
why not just make it the Brady Award
yeah,
for
yeah.
best
I mean
quarterback?
that's what I was getting at. If there's not a name for the Super Bowl MVP trophy, it should be the Tom Brady trophy. I would have no problem with that. I would endorse that plan. I just get a little, in general, uncomfortable when we start renaming things because this guy supposedly has a better resume than the old guy. That doesn't go well with me. You take Lombardi's name off the trophy, he just becomes another footnote in history ultimately, and that's what I
Right.
don't want to see happen.
Do you think that if Mahomes wins this year, that it supplants him into, if not the best, top two with Brady in terms of 3 in a row? Again, my Steelers never did it. They won back to back, 4 out of 6. Dallas did it with 2 out of 4, something along those lines. You look at the Raiders who won. You look at some of the other, obviously the Patriots. I mean, uh, is this if Mahomes wins, is this the greatest team and this his greatest achievement?
I think that's a little premature to start calling them the greatest team. Even if they do get it done and make it 4 out of 5, they're one of the greatest teams if that happens. And to your point, you name the others. That Dallas team of the mid '90s won 3 out of 4. The one year they didn't win, they lost in the NFC Championship, so they were right there. And then the Patriots have done it twice. The same regime. Brady and Belichick 3 out of 4, and then again a decade later 3 out of 5.
Hmm.
So there'll be a lot of new school fans. Oh, Mahomes is the greatest, etc. But really, he's just the latest greatest in a long line of teams that I think would be hard pressed to leave off that list. That includes the Montana Rice 49ers teams that won 4 in the 80s, and you named it earlier with Bradshaw and the Steelers winning 4. And again, we talked about New England and Dallas. So he's on the short list. If he wins 4, he's on that short list immediately. But to say he's the greatest, no, he's not quite there yet. Certainly, he's off to a good start, and certainly what Andy Reid has done with this organization, with Mahomes at the helm, yeah, they're on the short list. But to say clear cut number one, I don't think so. Not yet.
I, I wouldn't say clear cut number one. I would say in all confidence that if Andy Reid wins this, that he's the greatest coach ever. Because Philly was always on the cuff with him. He
Right.
went through Donovan McNabb and the other quarterback, number 12, it just escapes me. You know what I'm talking about. He and a Terrell Owens with a broken leg, essentially, in a Super Bowl. I mean, so I would say if Andy Reid wins, even though he doesn't have seven, I think he's the greatest coach in the league. Now, with Brady, you know, what Brady has against Mahomes is that he beat Mahomes. He beat Mahomes in the championship game. He beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So Mahomes can't take that. But I will say that again, it's something to be said for a Bradshaw or a Starbuck or a Brady or a Troy Aikman or all these guys who never won three in a row. And the fact that Mahomes is doing it in this day and age in that AFC conference with four other great quarterbacks, and he's not winning MVP of the league, and everybody's counting the team out, and he's doing it different from Tyreek Hill. I mean, I gotta say, for me, if they win next Sunday, I I I have to put him at the very least on the same level as Tom Brady. Brady will have seven and he'll have four, but the way he did it and the manner he did it, I mean, New England was the Super Bowl Invitational. Nobody was beating them. Nobody was beating New England, uh, especially if they won the AFC East and they had home, field throughout. So I just think it's really it's not always about the number. Robert Ory's got 11 titles. Michael Jordan got six. But who's better? I mean, we can't always put it on the titles and the championships. We got to put it on, you know, what they did in that era and those a lot of different factors that go into it. And I just think that if they win, you know, and they beat that that defense is lights out in Philly. I mean, they can ball out, and they can play man coverage because they're so good with Slay on the back end and the front on the four and their linebackers. Um, so if you beat that defense, the way they're playing, that defense was good 2 years ago. They're even better this year. That's saying a lot for Pat Mahomes and what he would accomplish after his fourth Super Bowl.
Right, and that's a big if. We've been saying if throughout this conversation. If they win, that's a huge if. Victory is far from guaranteed against a very good Philadelphia team. You mentioned the defense. We don't even need to expound on what they can do offensively, especially with that run game. So it's going to be a
Right.
tall order. It's going to be a tall order for Kansas City to do it again. But again, if they do get it done, I think the conversation is fair at that point in terms of greatest all time. I still don't think he's there yet. Um, and again, big picture, if we zoom out, he may only be at the halfway point if he has the same or even similar kind of longevity that Brady does. I don't think we'll see that. I don't think we'll see a guy at 6'1" or 6'2" or whatever he is make it to 44 years old. But it's possible, you know. So we may be only talking about the first, opening act here with him.
You
If
don't think
so,
he'll get seven? You don't think he'll get seven Super Bowls?
I think it's obviously on the table. but again, we're talking about seven. Seven is not four.
Right.
As good as four is, it's not seven.
So
So
if he
he's
gets the six, if he gets the six in this climate, and with Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, who
right.
you had taken to the Super Bowl, Lamar Jackson, and others, if he gets the six, is he not the greatest quarterback of our era?
Yeah, I mean, again, that then it becomes a much more of a debate at that point. Six is different than four as well. And let's not forget, Peyton Manning won 5 MVPs during the Brady era. He won five, which is the most all time by far. He won five, all in the AFC, either Indy or Denver. So it's not like it was some weak era where there weren't conference rivals. I mean, the Steelers always had good teams. We talked about Indy, we talked about Denver over the second half of Brady's career. Denver had Manning; they were, on the short list to compete with Von Miller and everything else. So
Right,
I mean, the competition was there with Brady, despite the fact that you could pencil them in to the Final Four every year, so to speak.
right,
They still had to beat some good teams to get it done. Baltimore again, with Joe Flacco, they broke through at one point. Coach Harbaugh had them competitive every year. So again, Mahomes is off to a great start, maybe even a historic start. Again, if he wins four before the age of 30, that's uncharted territory. But
mm,
I still think he's got a ways to go before we really take a hard look at his career work versus Brady's.
mm. Yeah. I mean, the guy ain't even 30 yet, so I get that. Talk with Nick Anastas here on the Batchelor News Report. Nick, I haven't mentioned those quarterbacks. What's most impressive that getting um, in the playoffs and being a perennial powerhouse like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have been. Joe Burrow not as much because of injuries and everything else, but they've been there and had a chance. But a lot of people compare Pat Mahomes to Michael Jordan. You had the Karl Malones and the Charles Barkleys and the John Stocktons and Clyde Drecklers and all these guys outside of that 2 year window where Akeem Olajuwon they won back to back in Houston. It was the Bulls Invitational, and it seems like that for the Chiefs. So if they're in that era and they're putting up the numbers, they just don't have enough whatever, and you can get into Buffalo at Kansas City this past weekend. But if they don't get there, are their careers sort of validated? I think it's harder for Josh Allen because the Bills haven't won anything. Remember, they were there 4 times and lost all 4 times. Only the Vikings have had that kind of fate. And now he can't even get to the Super Bowl, let alone win a Super Bowl. So, are their careers validated, or you put an asterisk by them, like a Dan Marino, who is my favorite quarterback, who got there the one time and never got back, and he was a prolific, thrower and everything, and a Hall of Famer. But he's Dan Marino was great, but are they gonna live with the they are great, but
You're gonna have to, right? I mean, unless they get it done, then yeah, most likely Josh Allen is headed for Dan Marino territory. I think that's a perfect comparison. Um, and that's not to diminish what those guys achieved either. I mean, Jim Kelly won 4 straight conference titles. That's nothing to sneeze at because we haven't seen it since. Okay, you want to talk history? There hasn't been a team that's won 4 straight conference championships outside of those Bills teams of the early '90s. Um, unfortunately for them, it does kind of come with, as you said, an asterisk. He was great, but never won the title. Had a good career, but um, unfortunately, that's the nature of sports. There's only one winner at the end of the year. The other 31 teams are all losers. So
Why don't people get that? At the end of the day, I hear this talk about Jalen Hurts 2 years, two in the last 3 years. You don't get a dub. Nobody cares about the bridesmaid. Nobody cares about you. You gotta. I keep saying, people say, "Who you rooting for in the Super Bowl?" And I go, "Nobody," because I'm a Steelers fan. I might
right,
predict somebody, but I'm a Steelers. I don't care. Pittsburgh ain't in it. I don't care
right,
because that means they're one of the 31 losers for that year.
right,
It's only one team that's going to win the Super Bowl, and that's going to be next Sunday. It's either going to be Kansas City winning their third in a row, or Philly winning their second in the history of their franchise. So, I mean, it don't matter. Nobody cares about the bridesmaid. They only care about the bride. And if you ain't the bride, then nothing else matters. So people
right,
get all excited about how you got there and all this other stuff. You got to win. And I don't have a problem with people or a fan base that has a problem with that. So if Bills Mafia is disappointed and they calling out this and that, because I really do, and Nick, you cover the AFC East, so you know it better than I. But I don't think Sean McDermott is the guy to get them over the top. He's made constant. You don't let. It's 4th and 5. You see the coverage. If Josh Allen stops his feet and the receiver goes in motion, I mean, basic football defense 101 is if the corner follows that receiver, you know it's man. If they don't, you know it's zone. And you know where the package is. And with Josh on the right side, it was weak side. The pressure was set up in terms of where it looked on the right side. They didn't read it right. He made a good throw under the circumstances, and the tight end Kincaid didn't make the catch. But the point is that they got outthought, and people killed Tomlin. People even called John Harbaugh's head. But Sean McDermott has been getting away with this for a long time. That was a bad call, a bad read. Him and the new coach uh, for the Bears and Ben Johnson, they made a bad read, and Steve Spagnuolo read it. He called it. He dialed it up. They weren't ready for it. They should have called timeout or something. It's 4th and 5. Your season is on the line. You don't want him Hail Mary, even though it's a great throw. You don't want him Hail Marying the throw down the field. And I think that, you know, Sean McDermott doesn't get a lot of criticism for what Josh Allen has done, who I've been a proponent of, saying he turned the ball over. He hadn't turned the ball over. He did
right.
well this year. And they still outside looking in with number 15. So I don't know where Josh Allen goes from there. I think if anybody's in a worse position, he is. He already got to try to not only get to the Super Bowl, he got to try to win their first Super Bowl. Jim Kelly, like you said, got there 4 years in a row, and the Bills never won anything. So the pressure of the world is on his shoulders, and I don't think he has the coach to get them through.
All right, let me play devil's advocate and defend Sean McDermott. And Bills Mafia should know this. Bills Mafia went 18 years without a playoff game. Let me repeat that. Bills Mafia, that fan base up in Buffalo, suffered 18 straight seasons without even smelling a playoff game until Sean McDermott arrived. And now he's brought them to the postseason 7 of the last 8 seasons. So from a 30,000 foot view, let's zoom out here. He is the best coach that franchise has had by far since Marv Levy left in 1997.
But Nick,
And
think about that though. Think
and
about
we
that though. Think about that though. They haven't won in 18 years since Marv Levy was there. So there's a standard. They went to four straight Super Bowls. They didn't win any, but they went to four straight. So they had that gap, and really, you're making the case for Mike Tomlin, who 18 years, no losing season. But the point is that you bring this guy in, they get the set. What's the standard? Is the standard to make the playoffs, or is the standard to win the Super Bowl? Tampa, their standard might be to make the playoffs because they got one Super Bowl. But the Steelers and the Patriots or whatever, the standard is you get there to win. You don't get there to get there. You ain't coming to the party. You coming to be the party. So if he's been there 7 out of 8 years in the playoffs, and we had the 13-second thing in Kansas City where they lost, we had other situation, and then this whole 4th and 5, and they don't go to Cook, 7, 8 times. This guy is, he's your mini Barkley, and you don't go to him. And I mean, I just think that a lot of criticism can go around, right? And we hear it with Mike Tomlin, we hear it with John Harbaugh, we hear it with a lot of different coaches. I don't think Sean McDermott gets enough criticism that he should because, yeah, they made the playoffs, right? But 32 teams make the playoffs, but they haven't won anything. And Josh Allen, as much as you and I'm coming around, give credit to his abilities. They're not winning. He's 0-4 against number 15. He got a better record regular season against Mahomes, but he hadn't beaten Mahomes in the playoffs.
Right.
And I don't think it's all on him. I think it's all on coaching. The coaching is not the coaching has failed him to make the plays when he needs to make the plays. Sean McDermott shows the arrogance and the golf to actually go for it. But then in some cases, he kind of shies down and makes poor decisions. And Josh Allen is the one leaving, you know, he's the one going up to the podium saying, well, we came up short again. And I just think that Sean McDermott is not the guy. He doesn't seem like the guy to get them over to the next level.
I hear what you're saying, and there are some absolute valid in-game criticisms. Sure, but again, I'm taking the big picture here. Are you going
Right?
to take the guy out that's gotten you to the verge of the finish line? And that's where they are. You say, okay, he's 0-4 against Mahomes. Well, everyone else is too. Okay, with the exception of Brady and Burrow on a one-time thing.
Right.
Again, this franchise was in the wilderness. In the wilderness. I mean, they didn't have a coach tenured longer than 3.5 years in that 25-year span I gave you. It was one coaching carousel after another. He came, he brought stability. He's been able to win consistently in the regular season, a handful of playoff wins. The only obstacle left is Kansas City, and they're right there. A 3-point loss this year on the road. A last-minute field goal miss from 44 yards out that would have tied the game last year. 2 years ago, you can pin it on them, I think, because they didn't come ready to play in that Cincinnati game. Cincinnati came in and ran it down their throat, and it was over after the first drive 2 years ago. The year before that was, again, another 6-point loss in overtime, where it was the 13-second debacle. Sure, there can be blame there. And then 2020, they're in the AFC Championship and just happy to be there. So, yes, I think the standards now have changed. Now that Buffalo is a perennial playoff team, the next step has to be taken, yes. But do you blame it on the guy who got you all the way there? From the wilderness to the AFC Championship to being 3 points away from beating the Chiefs on a number of occasions. You going to fire that guy because the grass seems greener on the other side? Who are you going to bring in? Gerard Mayo?
Yeah.
I mean,
How,
what's the
how
answer?
long? How long has Sean McDermott been there?
Since 2017,
How long has Josh Allen been there?
2018.
Okay, so it's on the coach. You got the quarterback. I mean, what do you want to do? You got the franchise quarterback. How many excuses does Josh Allen have to come up with? And I'm defending him. How many excuses does he have to come up with? Just say, I mean, they don't have to say it publicly, but again, it's this Michael Jordan effect. Like Josh Allen and Buffalo's coming along. It seems right now that Kansas City is the team to beat. Nobody's beating them for whatever reason. The number 15 and breaks and defense and Andy Reid or whatever. But I think that I guess for me it's the flip side. If he didn't have Josh Allen, where would they be? Would they be in the AFC Championship? I don't think so. Not the way he's coached in the a few times that they had opportunities to win. And let's give credit to Kansas City because Baltimore is in that same breath where their fans is like this and that and the ball this and it Andrews didn't fumble it. Look, Kansas City went into Baltimore last year in the AFC Championship game and beat them. So, I mean, do we give enough credit to Kansas City, or we don't give enough credit and understanding to the coaches and the quarterbacks, in Buffalo and Baltimore? Because at the end of the day, again, I'm gonna come across as it was apologist, but people killing Mike Tomlin. But guess what? Mike Tomlin came in 18 years ago. John Harbaugh was 17. They both won uh, one title,
Right.
both which say in previous teams. John Harbaugh with the Ray Lewis team and whatever, that kind of thing. Here comes Lamar, Ben Roethlisberger, whatever. And now you got Buffalo with Josh Allen coming in. He putting up all these numbers, and nobody's blaming the coaches other than in that one particular situation. John Harbaugh's not getting, talking about getting fired. Sean McDermott is not talking about getting fired. Mike Tomlin is. And actually, he's the only one that's actually won every year since he's been there. Um, but I'm not a big Sean McDermott fan. I'm just sorry. I mean, ironically, him and Tomlin played together. They played at William and Mary, but I just don't. I just think that Josh Allen. If Buffalo doesn't have Josh Allen, we ain't having this conversation because I don't think they have the right coach to get them. We can agree to disagree. I just think that he coaches very small in situations he needs to be big. Because Andy Reid came out and said, you know what? We got to run some stuff late in the game that we hadn't run. I mean, going for it on fourth down. I mean, I'm not a clicheist guy or a guy who listens to people on TV, but they're right. You going for it on fourth down, that whole Buffalo push cush, and you run it to the left every time. Kansas City says, okay, they running it to the left side, so we're going to stop the left. And they made no in game adjustments. Andy Reid made adjustments. Sean McDermott didn't. And that's why they home for the holidays, watching Kansas City on TV again play in this case the Eagles. He doesn't make enough, and I'm critical about Tomlin with that too. He doesn't make enough in-game adjustments in the biggest games of their season to get them ahead. Because Allen's going to give you the arm and the running, but you got to be able to call the right plays. And I don't think they call the right plays, and that's why they home and Kansas City's going for trying to repeat.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. First of all, I think we're again 100% aligned with our views on both Tomlin and Harbaugh.
Right.
And where would the Ravens be if 10 years ago they fired John Harbaugh for coming up short
That's
before
true.
he you know, Remember, the year before they won the Super Bowl over San Francisco, they missed a 32-yard field goal that would have sent the AFC Championship into overtime.
Right.
If Baltimore overreacts and fires Harbaugh, they never win that Super Bowl the next year.
Right.
So yes, does Andy Reid get enough credit for as much as he gets? The answer is no. Okay, again, they stopped the Bills cold on the first three, or two, I think it was, on 4th and 1. Those two to the left sides. They obviously saw the
Yeah, I think
game
it was.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Go on.
overloaded on the left side and stopped the first two 4th and 1s. I think the Bills converted the third one. And then the final one was that controversial replay situation where it appeared like Allen got the first down. It ruled in Kansas City's favor, and it turned the game around. So, I mean, again, you talk about the 4th and 1. That's a win for Spagnuolo on that one play. We see over 100 snaps, every game, and every one of them is a chess match between the OC and the DC. The DC, who, by the way, is a Hall of Famer in his own right, Spagnuolo, won that particular play. They designed that corner blitz perfectly. They timed it perfectly. They executed it perfectly. Credit goes to Spagnuolo and the defense. I'm not sure that's enough to fire Sean McDermott, because he got caught unaware on a perfectly designed blitz. Yes, there are, and we can chronicle his entire 8-9 year career in Buffalo if we want. He's had problems inside the 5-yard line in both regular season and postseason. Sure, you're going to find decisions that didn't go his way over the course of the tape, but the body of work is there when you compare to where that franchise was for 2 decades prior to his arrival to where they are now. And you can make that same argument about Josh Allen being the difference. Sure. What coach without a Hall of Fame quarterback is going to get, their team to the AFC Championship? Nobody.
Right.
That's again the same boat. Buffalo is right there. Right there. The only thing still standing in their way are Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs, this historically good team, as we talked about at the beginning of the interview. I mean, these Chiefs are in rare territory. And the fact that the Bills are 3 points away every single year shows you that, in my eyes, they have the right guy in place. And Billy Beane deserves credit, the general manager. They have a
Right.
competitive Super Bowl quality defense basically every year. This year, the numbers were down a little bit, but they rallied once they got their linebacker core healthy at the end of the year. All of a sudden, Joe Brady is a star on the head coaching market. Didn't land a job, but the fact that he's only a year and a half into the OC gig tells you that that they're doing something right. So I think they've got the coordinators. I do think they have the coach. They definitely have the front office, and they have the quarterback to get it done. The last hurdle is this historically good Kansas City Chiefs team. I think the Bills made the right move. They didn't overreact. They stayed put. It looks like they're going to bring that staff back, including Joe Brady, and they'll have it again. They'll have a chance next year. They should, knock on wood, if everybody is healthy and plays to expectations, they should be back on the short list of contenders in a stacked AFC again next year. And you have Sean McDermott, ultimately, I think, does deserve some credit for having the Bills in this conversation year after year when they hadn't made the playoffs for 18 years before that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some credit to go to him in that regard to get them back on the map. And this, I don't really like this whole new Bills Mafia type thing. Bills and Mafia. I don't really. But anyway, I mean, like the fact that he's got the back in and let's talk about coaches and situations. I'll leave the Super Bowl the next week. I'll talk with Nick Anastas on the Batchelor News Report. And Nick, um, we mentioned Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, both from the offensive and the defensive side of Detroit. Ben Johnson going to Chicago, Aaron Glenn taking over the Jets. Um, and I think I'm one of those guys that kind of believes if your weakness is on offense, you get the offensive guy. Weakness on defense, you get the defensive guy. I think the Bears kind of got it right in terms of that. We'll see what happens with Caleb Williams and if he develops under this coach. Um, love Aaron Glenn. Not so right with the Jets because the Jets are the strong point is really their defensive side, but Aaron Glenn has paid his dues, so he has a right to go somewhere. Um, Dallas getting a Schottenheimer. I mean, it ain't Marty. It's way far past
Right.
Marty. And this guy has been a sort of a journeyman assistant coach for a while, never been a coach. They hire him. Saints might hire the offensive guy. McCarthy said, I'm just going to wait it out for a year. So I would think that because they've had some struggles offensively, especially with Derek Carr, I don't think Derek Carr will be back, that they'll probably go offense. But they've been talking with Kellen Moore, who I felt was bad in Dallas. I think he's gotten a little better in Philly because the talent's better, but I'm not really a Kellen Moore guy.
Yeah.
But they talk about Moore going to the Saints. But what say you about these coaching things? Because you got one case that he's a first hire, and Jerry Jones just kind of embarrassed the guy at the press conference. But then you have these shreds like Pete Carroll. Like I love Pete Carroll, the rah rah, right? But Mike Tomlin's a rah rah. That don't always win. Pete Carroll going to the Raiders. Like I don't know what Brady and those guys are doing there. The Davis family. Pete Carroll was in his '70s, early '80s, or whatever he is, and he go. I don't understand some of the rhyme or reason with these franchises. When they bring these quarterbacks in, I mean these coaches in. What say you about some of them in particular this year, and who's been hired and who's been fired? Because Dallas could have just stayed with McCarthy. He
Right.
was 12-5 3 straight years. You win 36 games in 3 years. You make the playoffs here and there, and you fire the guy that worked under you to take your place. I mean, what? That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
You know, expecting different results and doing the same thing. You got the guy who worked under the guy that you fired, and you bring him in. So what about these moves in terms of coaching?
I think that's the first time I've ever heard you say something nice about Mike McCarthy. I think that tells you all you need to know. If we've got LA Batchelor praising Mike McCarthy, that tells you that the Dallas made the wrong move. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Is it Jerry just hiring a guy because he likes him type of thing? That he interviewed well or had, got along with Jerry pretty well. I don't know. The Schottenheimer thing had me scratching my head and will until August, I think. Um, he does his resume does not warrant a head coaching hire. It just doesn't. So unless Jerry sees something that everyone else doesn't, which is, I suppose, possible, this hire does not make sense to me on its face. And then Aaron Glenn, I don't know. I don't know if that's the right fit. I mean, yeah, he's been around, but how accomplished is he? I mean, Detroit just gave up 45 points in an upset loss at home, and then this guy gets promoted. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I know they had injuries in the secondary, et cetera, but you're giving up 45. That defense wasn't that good to begin with either, even at full strength. So the Aaron Glenn thing, I mean, I liked him as a player, et cetera. He seems like a player's coach, and I may be wrong, but I just thought the Jets could have gotten a better candidate. I do like the Chicago hire. Their problem is up front, personnel wise. They need to protect Williams much better. So whoever, Ben Johnson's going to come in, I think, with personnel work to do. in contandem, rather in conjunction with that front office. They're going to have a big draft and get that kid some protection. But yeah, I think Ben Johnson's resume is better than Aaron Glenn's by far. So
Right.
that hire does make sense in Chicago. And then there was one. Oh, the Pete Carroll thing is weird. I mean,
Yeah.
that just caught me off guard. I mean, he is at least 70. And it appeared like all indications he was done with football. And then, there wasn't much of a buzz. His name was not in the rumor bill at all. And then it seemed like it just kind of happened out of the blue. So I don't know. I've always doubted Pete Carroll, but he always seems to exceed my expectations. He did so certainly in Seattle. So we'll see. We'll see. The Raiders are a mess. They always are. They're a bottom feeder franchise. Unfortunately, I mean they have the history. Yes, but what have they really done in the last 30 years, 40 years?
Right.
Outside of the one trip to the Super Bowl under Gruden. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we were hearing a lot of big names at the beginning of the cycle that didn't pan out either. Deion Sanders. I thought that at least would have been fun. That at least would have been fun and interesting to watch if he did go to Dallas. So I was kind of
Right.
surprised that they at least didn't bring him in for an interview. Whether he deserves that or not is a separate conversation. But I figured we'd have a little bit more of a splash. Rex Ryan was one of the candidates for the Jets. That again at least would have been interesting. So I think it kind of started with high expectations, but this cycle, 7 firings. There's been 6 hirings. I think the OC from Tampa probably deserved it. They overachieved this year. He revived Baker Mayfield. He deserves a shot, I think. But outside of that, it's been kind of a blah off season in terms of the coaches carousel so far. I mean, we got to give these guys the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see how it actually shakes down. But there's nothing that really captures my intrigue, let's say, in terms of these new hires, at least so far.
Is Cam Ward best quarterback coming out?
He's probably the best in a bad class. Not to speak negatively of him. It's just not as deep of a quarterback class as we've seen in the last 5 years. So it's going to kind of test the philosophy of, do you automatically have to take a quarterback first? So Tennessee is going to answer that question. They probably will end up, because they have a genuine need at quarterback, they'll probably end up taking Ward 1. I mean, that seems to be at least the consensus of all the mocks that I've seen. That it's Ward at 1 and then Sanders at 3 to the Giants. That's at least what I'm hearing.
Have you seen and what?
I don't know how good both of these guys are. I mean, we're going to find out. You take Hunter away from Sanders, and there's that's going to answer that question one way or the other real quick. How mobile is he? We're going to find out. I think the Giants have to take a quarterback. They're going to have to take one of the two, whoever's there. They don't have the luxury of taking another position. Tennessee, kind of the same boat, but I think the Giants are in more dire straits than the Titans are at the QB spot. But yeah, probably again, especially when there aren't that many quarterbacks to go around. Like I said, kind of a thinner draft at the position this year. Then I think probably Ward goes 1, Sanders goes 3, and then we go from there.
I don't know if he's still Levis, but Tennessee definitely has a quarterback.
Yeah. I'm not a Will Levis guy either, but I'm just saying at least he's got a pulse, and I don't think you can say that about a Giants quarterback.
But see, I would say Rattler. I saw him play and covered the SEC. Said that he's not good, but I like him for they need to let Derek Carr whatever and take a chance with Rattler anyway. So If he gives them 8, 9 wins in the playoffs, that's a plus for him. I think he can. He's not that big. He's accurate and he's very he's like he'll make some plays when he needs to. So I think the speed to hire an offense, yeah, I thought would have been fun because of style of play and Aaron Rodgers. I thought that it should take a higher offense and then go ahead and make Rattler it's his job to move.
Yeah, I think that's probably the route they're going to go. I think that's probably the route they're going to have to go. They got to see what they have. They threw him in there for Rattler. They threw him in there for a couple of spot starts here and there when Carr got dinged up. You saw flashes. Like you said, he made some plays. He struggled a little bit, but that's to be expected in the guy's first couple of career starts. He was a fourth rounder last year. It'll be year number 2. I don't think you're going to get much more out of Derek Carr if you're the Saints.
Yeah,
You've got a new head.
Derek Carr needs to come up in a place where he can help drive things because the things expectations is that he should have been the starter and wells and the Super Bowl. So he can't get that done. Derek Carr needs to go.
Yeah, that would make sense. It seems like Carr is probably at that point in his career, age wise, where that would make sense. He transitions to one of the better, more experienced backups in the league for another team. I could absolutely see that playing out. And we'll see what kind of a pick the Saints go with. I think they have much more. They have other needs as well. I mean, this is a roster that's far from complete. So, given the sparse nature, as we talked about, of the quarterback position in this year's draft, you've got, again, a second-year guy. You got a new coach. The timing seems right to put him into the lineup to see if he can sink or swim in New Orleans.
Yeah, and that team is not going to win 7, 8 games next year. They made the smart Lattimore for him to Washington, but it's going to be. Real quick, last question. Celtics. Um, this is a team that lives and dies by the 3 points. I mean, sort of 50 quarters, and they have a mistakes, then they. But it's got to be some concern, especially when you. The thing is they're healthy. There, the Knicks are tied with us, the rest uh, behind. Now, I don't think Spain is type of and be the top seed. It might be Boston, might be New York. But are there Boston with the Celtics team where they can win and they can the playoffs and go on conference finals? They've already 9 games so at home. They were 4 or 5 last year. Any concern for the fans? And what is this staff saying and doing at this point? And by the way, it comes in former coach who I railroaded because that type of stuff was condoning it, but I think they were really wanted to see him some bad time stuff and they went after. He comes in and gets and was really and I saw really, it meant a lot. But his predecessor and then well in the time. But they're still thinking about the Celtics coming out, particularly on the offense.
I think, again, it comes down to a difference between the style of play of the regular season versus the playoffs in general in the NBA. Regular season is much more loose. There's more spacing. The defense isn't as tight, so you're going to see more 3-point balls put up. I mean, this is a team that can drive and kick, make the extra pass, and they've got shooters. So that's part of the DNA anyway. And I just think that because of the style of play that you see in the regular season, it's a little more free flowing than it is in the postseason. When the postseason comes around, I think the Celtics are fine with making that switch. They've got guys that can create. They've got guys that can put their head down, get into the lane, and get to the free throw line. They've got guys that can play downhill. They've got guys that can attack and create one-on-one. So, they're very versatile offensively. That's why they're so explosive. Regular season, sure, it's about staying healthy. They're going out there having fun, jack up 53s if you want. I think, again, the postseason is going to change that because the defenses are that much more tighter. The energy is elevated, the competition level is elevated, and it's just a different game in the postseason. And the Celtics, again, I think are talented enough, versatile enough to make that adjustment where they can, get to the free throw line, slow the game down a little bit if they need to, and just refocus the offense against a top tier playoff type of intensity defense. So, it's open, it's up and down. Everybody's having fun. The rotations are deeper in the regular season. Again, I said this last week. Once April rolls around, that's the start of the real season, of the real mission
Right.
for this team in particular. Things will tighten up across the board, across the league once the playoffs come. And again, I think the Celtics will be just fine with that adjustment.
But the fact are you not concerned um injury prone? They have some of the Robinson coming Cleveland in first place. But we don't expect too much with the Mitchell and all the big the Celtics don't want to be Lord, and I don't think they certainly don't want in the 4 seed.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think the standings will come into focus for them once we get closer to the finish line, post All-Star break, I would say. Teams start paying a little more attention to the seedings. I think the Celtics will be in that group for sure. Because home court is vital. I think, when you look at the numbers, the winning percentage for the home team rises in the postseason when compared to the regular season across all sports, especially basketball. So I think that is one of their goals, is to win the conference outright like they did last year, get the 1 seed like they did last year, and get home court like they did last year. So again, I don't know if sleepwalking is the right term, coasting is the right term, whatever it is. This team again has shown that they can elevate their play when it matters. And I think that as we approach the end of the regular season, post All-Star break, they'll be a little bit more in tune to start to close that gap with Cleveland, and then it'll be, I think, a race to the finish for the 1 seed.
Mm. Well, as a Sixer fan, hope we come up if we be at least the 7th. Not the Celtics to do much of it.
Well, let's just hope Philly gets in that top 10, right? Give them a chance.
Yeah, I mean, really,
Right.
Massey is incredible. He got another 30 last night. At 40 against the Lakers at 4. And if Paul George and Embiid hurt against me or whatever, and they haven't played at all, if they get, a 5 streak around the country, maybe they have a shot. And, with plays and Paul George can get done. I mean, I'm saying that a lot of people are going to want to play, especially if it's the game or the always, man, I appreciate enjoy. the rest of the week and get your predictions.
That sounds good, LA. You have a good weekend as well. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man, good insight. Enjoy. Be careful.
You too.
All right. Nick and Ash is always come on to talk sports for a minute. Don't forget that you can watch the show and this can go to LA Bachelor, LA Bachelor, ATCHELO on YouTube. Check out the show. Check us out on and other outlets as well. Enjoy. We thank you. With you soon.